speaker panel. I just want to quickly welcome everyone to come to the CS speaker panel and also thank the guests as well to take their time to share their experiences today. Before we begin, I just wanted to quickly introduce the Professional Development Department that was first started by Furqan this year. And this is essentially an opportunity for you guys to connect with the Muslim community. And not only that, but also to give you some sort of guidance in your career as well. So now we're going to basically begin with introducing the speakers, and then we're going to be asking some general questions and some questions that relate to you guys, and then we're going to open the floor to the audience as well.
So yeah, you guys can start with your name, position, and company.
My name is Linda. Currently I'm working as like a software engineer at Robinhood. And Robinhood is basically, for those of you who don't know, it's like a financial company that is like a broker dealer, so you can use it to buy stocks and investments or something.
Hi, my name is Abdul Basit. I'm a software engineer at Atlassian. Atlassian is the company that made Jira, Bitbucket, essentially project management tools. Yeah, that's it.
Alright, so look everyone. I'm a computer engineering grad from Waterloo. I'm working at Verily, which is a healthcare arm of Alphabet, and I'm working as a software engineer. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I guess we're going to just start off with the most general question, which is, what inspired you to pursue a career in software engineering?
Yeah, for me personally, I think I joined in 2017. So then and now there's a big difference in terms of the people going into software. Back then there was a lot of people as well, but I think it was still growing as much as it is now. So yeah, it was something that I just wanted to do because I saw the future of it, and it was going to become bigger. And I also liked math a lot and problem solving, and software engineering coding is the way you have to think is a bit mathematical and logical in that way. So I thought it would be a good way for me to show my skills and pursue type of problem solving I like.
Yeah, for me, mine is more of a personal answer. My uncle is a software engineer and I grew up with him. He's the one who provided me my first computer. That's when you still had the Windows XP with the big computers that you can put in your labs. He just showed me the technical aspect of things, introduced me to the technical side, and he also showed me the benefits of it. Where anytime I got back from school, the man was always there, and I felt that was a life that I would like. Combined with the fact that I love problem solving as a whole, I felt that was a career that I can see myself doing without wearing a suit that big other things.
So for me, it was a bit different. I actually joined computer engineering thinking I was gonna do more on the hardware side, because one of my hobbies is building gaming PCs. So think AMDs, graphics cards, and all those things. But as my quals progressed, I felt I was more interested towards the development side of things, and then it kind of just took off from there. Working on side projects, and the passion kind of grew after I joined the program.
Great answers. So just to get to know you guys a little bit more, can you briefly take us through your internships that you did in school, if you did any, and how you made the most of them? So how you really took advantage of that position of being in a corporate environment while still being a student?
So I can start with that. So I was at UFD. So we had PEY, which is a 16-month-long internship rather than in Waterloo and Miranda, it's co-ops 4 or 5 months. But first they just combined it together 16 months at once. So the way I took advantage of that was 2 ways. Some of them is because you're there for a long period of time, you have more time to actually work on long-term and more meaningful projects. Because first they onboard you in the beginning, and then you have all this time where you're working for them, so they're more likely to give you bigger projects and work more on them because you have more time there. And secondly, I was working at Huawei, which is the Chinese firm, and they're very much into research and development. And as you guys know, China's really wanting to be higher in their technology and have more. So I joined their lab, their research and development lab, and because they really promote research, they basically had a bunch of different opportunities for you to come up with your own algorithm or come up with whatever you wanted idea you had, and actually have them patent it under their name. So my manager was actually really supportive for me for that. So he was able to help me and push me and basically present my idea to the patent review board, and I was able to publish a patent in my name. The company owns it, but it's also in my name. So that was a really good achievement, and it felt really nice to have that. So I think what the most important thing is at the time, what I really wanted to do was go into a research field, because that's where you have the opportunity to work on new things, and you want to do that when you're a student. before you're like, or when you're like an early new grad, before you're really getting like stuck in the field. Because when you have like several years of experience, you kind of tend to think in like a certain way. So it's good to have that at the beginning of your career to just be in a field where you can have more innovation and companies actually promote innovative ideas and technology.
That's really cool. Thank you.
I don't think I can pick that honestly. So for me, I had 4 internships. To be honest, my very first internship, I feel like I owe them money because like majority of the time I just spent it learning. I didn't have the necessary skill set to be able to like work on a specific framework because I didn't know a framework. I could only code. The only course I already took at the time was like Python. So I knew like the basics of Python and I could problem solve and solve with code problems with Python, but I didn't have any like knowledge of a specific framework to help contribute. So I spent majority of the time learning and also just socializing with like the tech lead at the time. We had conversations around like his retirement plan and whatnot, just taking a genuine interest in him. And he sort of invested in me like, oh, if you want to do certain things, this is the career path you should follow, or these are the tools you should learn. My second co-op term, I think that was when I started contributing to like companies. I worked for ATS Automation. At the time, they were building like an automation software to sort of help detect when you have faulty products in your production line. So think like if you are PepsiCo, for instance, and you're producing 1,000 bottles of 1,000 bottles of water, for instance, right? You don't want someone sitting there to like manually detect a fault within the production line. So if they have like a camera system to capture that, that's besides the point. My contribution towards that was being more proactive. Talking to like my tech lead at the time, asking him for tasks that I could work on, asking him questions on certain things that I never understood in the classroom, or things that were not taught at the time to me. I had 2 other co-op terms after that, and those ones I primarily focused on contributing to them. They were mostly in the area of automation where I was given problems by a company. One was an energy company, and they just required me to build any solutions to sort of automate their process. So it just gave me a chance to like explore some of my abilities or like my problem solving abilities, choosing the stack I want. Then the latter one gave me a specific stack to work with. So just going from working with what I want to going from working with something specific. So yeah.
Thank you, Safa.
Yep, and from me, at YU, you have the opportunity to work at 6 different internships. And coming in, I did not have any experience in software, so I kind of just learned things as I went. And some of the key things that I recommend is remain curious, ask questions. Managers more often than not are happy to help you out. They know this is your first time. There's no expectations for you to kind of like change the company roadmap or anything. Feel free to make mistakes, ask questions. And the biggest thing is take initiative. Don't be shy to work on tasks that you think might be too tough. In more cases than not, you will have the environment, the support to kind of like help you get through that. And that's kind of been my takeaway from my internships, just be there to learn and really prioritize your internships. They're very important, especially after you're looking for full-time work. These things really do matter.
Thank you.
Awesome. So speaking of internships, I guess a lot of CS students are facing a very like competitive market right now. So I just wanted to ask you, like looking back, is there like anything you would do differently in your job search?
I think personally it would just be like to be more like vigorous with my search. So I think like in the beginning, if you don't see any like response, then you can get a little bit like you can feel a bit bad and you can get a little bit less motivated. But I think it's best to be like more vigorous and like keep going at it as much as you can. And one thing I realized is that a lot of my job opportunities came from LinkedIn and from recruiters, either me reaching out to them or them reaching out to me. I really think it's important to have like an online presence. Because a lot of time recruiters are, instead of just going through applications, they also want to go out and find people themselves. So if you have like an up-to-date LinkedIn and you're posting and like you're visible in like the page and they can easily find you, I think that makes like a big difference as well. It's not just like blindly applying, but like making those connections and getting referrals. Like they do also check referrals. That's one of the top things they check, along with like themselves going out and checking applications. So I would say like one of the things that I started doing was messaging people, asking for referrals, and usually they don't help you, but sometimes people do help you because they also get like a referral bonus if you get like the job. So something in it for the person referring you and you as well. So never hesitate to like reach out and ask for referrals. I I found that did help me a lot more in like getting interviews. So it's more just like targeting recruiters and like referrals rather than just like blindly applying to jobs.
I'll say the one thing I reflect back on is I attended Laurie, and I always felt like there was this connotation that like if you want to work for a big company like Google or Microsoft, that's like jobs for the UW kids, and like any other jobs are like jobs for us. I'll say like don't. What that essentially entails is you proactively telling yourself no, or helping the company tell yourself no. Be proactive in applying to any jobs, whether large or small companies. Don't just box yourself into like a specific type of company. Another thing that comes to mind is applying early. Now, because you secured a job in like the winter time, does not mean that you have a fall call of them and you shouldn't start applying to fall, right? I think one of the things I did was I just always applied the academic year, the academic semester prior to my fall term. So just applying early gives you more options. A lot of companies sometimes when they reject you, they have like I want to say a refresh period where like after like a certain period of time, you can apply for the same job again and go through that interview process with that additional experience of maybe you can fill that.
Good advice.
Yep, from my experience, I'd say one of the biggest thing was resume. Keep it simple. I think I was using like Canva, 2 pages, looking very like way too playing with the fonts and stuff. I don't think you should do that. ATS probably rejects that right away. So there's standard format. Keep it very simple. Don't use a lot of colors. That's one thing I'd say. And also I probably should have worked on more side projects going into my first co-op. And I think I struggled a lot, especially getting my first co-op because I didn't have anything on my resume. And that was a learning moment. And another thing was I totally agree about applying on LinkedIn, reaching out to people and having an updated LinkedIn profile. I feel that's very important. I was mainly just using Waterloo Works, and I felt like could have gotten better offers if I had been proactively applying on LinkedIn and asking for referrals. Don't be shy to ask for referrals. And they probably do get bonuses if they refer you, so don't be shy.
I can attest to that.
All right, yeah, thank you. Great answers, guys. So now moving into a little bit more of a technical question. So I found like in the internships I've done, and I'm going to specify because Abdul-Basit asked me this to specify. When I say software engineering, I mean like coding specifically, so not counting cloud or data or things like that. So I want to ask you guys about in your roles, how much of your work is pure software engineering, and I mean just coding, and we can think of that as, you know, you have a specific stack and you're working within that stack, and then how much is like, you know, DevOps, troubleshooting, or learning cloud or data skills, and then if you do face like in a role or a project you're working on that, I should probably know this, how do you go about learning those things?
Yeah, so for me, in my team, basically we own the entire code. So if the code is like working or if it's not working, if we're receiving errors, so like someone is trying to hit that endpoint or that code and we're receiving errors, then we have to troubleshoot and figure it out. So in my team, it's not just your coding, but you own the entire system from like end to end. So just the other day, like for example, one of our endpoints, there was a lot of database noise. So basically, when you're trying to query something, if you're trying to query an account, for example, that should be one query, but we're receiving like 500 queries for that one account. So you kind of have to go in and see what's going on, why you're receiving that, because that's going to take up storage, that's going to take up like the processors, and that's going to affect other teams, and that's going to cost the company more money. So you need to optimize, you need to figure out the bottom stuff as well. How I go about figuring that out is I time box myself, so like I'll go through articles or I'll go online and try to figure out like on this topic what's going on. And in that time box, if I can't figure it out, then I'm gonna message someone that's like, let's say there's someone in the company, a team in the company that's responsible for storage. I'll message them and like I'll send a message in their channel and ask like, oh, why do you think this is happening? Because this happened previously, and go through like previous documentation if anyone else has the same issue, so that I'm not wasting too much of my time learning something new. So yeah, that's kind of how I go about it. It's best to like ask directly and ask other people that are experts in it, because like everybody wants to help each other in the company because well, like you have the same like shared goal. So yeah, I think it's best to like do your own research and help people, ask people that are like experts. Otherwise, like you might be going down the wrong path for like a really long time and just like waste time.
Yeah, for me, I'll say, like Yumna said, it's it's all inclusive at work. You get to do like the DevOps side of things, you get to do the coding side of things. How I approach like learning a new skill or a new skill set in general is I try to take tasks that like focuses on that particular skill that I want to learn. That gives me an opportunity to kind of have a commitment, like a work time commitment towards like attaining that new skill set, developing and learning. And the honest truth about it is, since we're talking at like an internship level and a new grad level, companies expect that like a task that will take a senior or just a normal engineer, like 2 days will probably take you like 5 days, for instance. So they expect that like there's gonna be a learning curve, there's gonna be an expectation of learning. No one expects you to like just know those things at once. So generally I would say like I proactively at least take tasks that are in other areas that I haven't worked on and use that opportunity to kind of learn.
Yep, so coding is actually like not 100% of what you do as a software engineer. You're interacting with many tools you rely upon. One, I'm pretty sure everyone has used is GitHub, right? You're pushing code to GitHub. You have GitHub actions running. Those actions are doing a lot of stuff to the code, right? They're pushing it to AWS and running CI/CD pipelines. So you have to kind of build that knowledge of how to troubleshoot when things aren't working. Coding is actually the easiest part of the process. It's making sure that your code is robust and other teams or other clients are able to use it effectively. And so yeah, you have to use a lot of other tools like Docker, Kubernetes, or whatnot. And how I go about learning those skills where it's a bit different now. In my internships, I rely heavily on just Google and YouTube watching tutorials. But now I'm making more of an effort to actually reach out to my team members, which are a lot better and they're very like helpful. I find that a lot better than just watching like YouTube videos. And yeah, and if you can prioritize in-person internships over online remote work, so that's something that also helps in learning new skills, especially at an internship level.
Thank you. Awesome. So earlier you guys were mentioning a lot about like reaching out to people and asking for referrals, and obviously in order to do that you have to network. So can you just talk a little bit more about what's the importance of networking and just what your advice is on how students can effectively build relationships with established professionals in their field?
Yeah, sure. So, like I mentioned earlier, the importance of networking is it really helps you get like your foot in the door for a lot of jobs. So, like for example, when I was in university, we used to have career fairs like every year. So then, one thing I did is I would go to the career fair every year, and sometimes I saw like the same recruiters coming in like year after year, because like that is something that happens because they'll be working at the same company, and so the next year because they have experience, the company might send them again to go to the career fair. So it's nice to kind of like talk to them and stand out. And then in the next year, if you see them again, you can talk to them again and be like, oh, like, do you remember? So I had an instance where there was someone I talked to, and then I showed her my resume, and she said, your resume is kind of like everybody else's. Because I was in first year, and she's like, you don't have anything new here, anything you need. And that summer, I did research with one of my profs, so I saw her the next year, and I was like, oh, like, that's a good advice. And I was able to get like this research and this project completed, and she was really happy about that. So she like helped like connected with me on LinkedIn, and she was like, I can help you get a job when you like graduate. So that's kind of like having meaningful connections rather than just like having the same conversation that everybody else does. You can ask them for advice, or you can find like a common ground. But yeah, would recommend going to like career fairs, going to like different events like this. Just going to as much events as you can, because you never know who you might have a connection with, or who might be like willing to help you. Because it's like two ways, right? You want to connect with them, the other person might not want to connect with you, but the more you put yourself out there and the more you try, the more likely you are to meet that middle ground with the other person and to make that connection. And then it's good to like again like message them on LinkedIn from time to time, so they don't forget who you are, because they are meeting a lot of people. And yeah, it's just good to like be as much involved as you can in events and show initiative.
Yeah, I'm currently looking at my phone. I think I kind of touched on everything I want to touch on. But networking is very important in general. It gives you like an advantage over other people, essentially like a backdoor. I would say I personally know of several instances of like people getting like jobs just off of the fact that they knew someone, as opposed to like trying to go through the traditional route where you go on LinkedIn and you see like 100 people already applied to the same job that you're trying to apply. I had like 3 bullet points to kind of talk about to kind of build an effective relationship. We talked on one already, which is like finding a common ground. So this could be like seeing someone from like the same school, talking to an alumni of a club that you're a part of, so like an ex-NSA member, for instance, or like even at the masjid. My brother is here, and like he was telling me like the other day, he met like a brother. He was talking to a brother at the masjid about like securing his first internship, and another brother heard him and was like, "Hey, yo, by the way, could you like send me your resume? I'm hiring within the same field that I'm looking for." And I think to also kind of take in mind when reaching out to people is like you gotta have a genuine interest. You have to take a genuine interest in like that relationship. You can't. A lot of the things people do, even like currently to me, is like they just send me like, "Hi, how are you? I saw this job posting. Can you refer me?" I don't know you. I'm not gonna recommend someone I do not know, unless like if they were recommended by someone that I trust, right? So just taking a genuine interest and taking a genuine interest in the individual and like having conversations around that. When you have conversations with people, it doesn't necessarily have to be about a specific job. It could be about things that you guys are just commonly interested in. I came to a networking event here at LAS, and like I met like an account executive at D2R, and we're talking about like my background, I'm from Nigeria, and we started talking about Nigerian economy, and at the end of the day, we connected on LinkedIn and had conversation. Now, the main reason why I use this as an example is it was like a computer science event, but for some reason an accounting event, executive came to the event, and everyone just said, "Oh, that's an accounting executive, they have no value to me." And the individual was just left alone. I was like, "Hey, let me just talk to this individual." And that's how I built that relationship in order to get the person to recommend the job. I like D2R. And the last point I had here regarding nurturing a relationship is nurturing the relationship after establishing a common ground. Just try to imagine like someone you haven't talked to for like 2 years, for instance, shooting you a message and like, "Hey, yo, by the way, can you like recommend me for this job?" It just feels, you feel a certain way, the person will feel a certain way about it. They might end up doing it, but they wouldn't do it out of like, they wouldn't do it out of joy is how I put it. So just like, I'm not saying like message them daily, but just doing it at like a specific cadence, maybe every 3 months. "Hey, hey, we haven't spoken in a while. I just want to catch up and see like if there's any update on your part." Or, "Hey, I noticed that like you got promoted at work. Congratulations on that. I just want to send my best wishes." Also interacting with their posts could also help with that. So yeah, that's kind of what I have.
Yeah, I think you two probably went over most of the things, but going to career fairs, interacting with people in person, as opposed to just cold messaging them on LinkedIn, is the way to go. And I find hackathons are a good way too to kind of network with like-minded people beyond just having something to put on your resume. And for me, it's just having a LinkedIn profile, keeping it updated, and adding your coworkers. Once you're doing your internships, add them on your LinkedIn network, and you can reach out to them in the future if there's a job posting and you're interested. So.
I have just a quick follow-up question from Stockton. So earlier you mentioned about like how I think you should try to get more like in-person roles compared to like online.
Yeah.
And obviously when you're getting internships or even full-time jobs, you should continue to network. So do you think it's easier to network in person, or does it just depend on the person?
No, it's like in person is very different. So when I started off my first internship, it was like COVID hit, I went to remote, and my last job was the only one which was actually in person. So I got to make that comparison between online and in person, and I feel like not only are the connections more genuine and good, but the main advantage is the learning. I felt like the last internship, my sixth internship, was probably where I learned the most. And I wish my previous internships had been in person as well. So yeah, if you guys have hybrid or something, prioritize just going in person, going to the office, interacting with your team members. This is a game changer in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So now we just want to touch on the fact that like starting an internship or new grad role, there's kind of like this pressure, like I need to stand out, I need to make sure I get noticed. And you kind of want to make sure that you leave a lasting effect for your team. So I just want to ask you guys, what kind of skills, both soft skills and hard skills, helped you stand out in your internships and your jobs throughout the years?
Yeah, so I can take that. Helped you stand out early in your roles throughout the years.
Yeah, so you can focus on soft skills or hard skills that helped you out.
I think starting out was pretty much nothing,
Yeah.
but what happened over the co-ops was whatever I learned during my internships, I'd work on a side project using those technologies and skills, and then put that on my resume. So as time progressed, I had a portfolio of projects that I could show to my employer, and yeah, that's it for this discussion.
Cool.
So I think it's in this spot. I wanted to
Yeah,
say
it's
that's
already
good.
done, so, yeah.
What skills have we stand out? Oh yeah, for this one, I actually have a specific example in mind. One of the things I did, because like one of the common things today is like we don't have a lot of projects or experiences when we wanted to secure an internship. One of the things I did, and I would advise people to do, is don't discount like the projects you do in classroom, regardless of how small they are. Right? I remember like my CP 212, is it 212? The VBA course. 212. Yeah, my VBA course at the end of the term, or at the format they chose at the time, at the end of the term you're supposed to be like a project which would probably take you like 30 minutes tops. That was what I put on my resume as my first project when I was applying to my internship, and that's what secured me my first job. So don't discount things like you do in the classroom, or like be like, oh, this project is too small. It's not WOU maths, for instance. Just try as much as possible to like reflect and view those classrooms. Reflect on your courses and see what projects you've worked on and add them to your profile. Top resume. Sorry.
Yeah, I would agree with what you said about the resume to add as much as you can, especially stuff that like makes you stand out or something you did really well in one of your classes, to actually get the interview. And once you're at the interview, I would say like the best way to stand out is to explain more than like what they expect. So let's say you have like a coding question and they ask you for like the time complexity or space complexity. If you just like say it out loud, you can talk about like the math behind it. I know like one of the interviews I had for an internship, the interviewer was really happy with the fact that I explained the math behind it and I showed like the summation formula and why the complexity was like a certain time complexity was like order n, for example. So it helps to like showcase that you have knowledge. You're not just like memorizing that this like piece block of code should be like this type of complexity, but you actually show your understanding, which is something that they want to see at an internship level, because maybe the other people don't have that same level of understanding. And if they see that you have this deep level of understanding, they can even like compare you to someone that is working as like a full time, and so they'll see more value in adding you to the company and like hiring you. So I would say that in your interviews, practice giving them a lot and really know what you're talking about, really understand what you're doing, because they can see when you're kind of like doing some BS, or like if your code isn't like as optimal, or if you don't have as much experience. I would say practice a lot. In interviews, practice a lot of coding. You want to be as like perfect as you can, because that will really help you stand out. Like, and the interview makes a really big difference. Like, there's an interview where you're good enough to like get the job versus like you're doing really well. So not only are you good in the job, but like they're thinking of you as a top candidate, and they might even think of you as someone they can use like in future years, like after you graduate. And this is not only for co-ops, but for full-time positions as well. A lot of times your salary is dependent on how well you can like answer questions in the interviews. And if you're a really good candidate and they really want you to join because you're better than like all the other people they interviewed, you can even negotiate like a higher salary or like more benefits, because then you become someone that's like very attractive in their eyes because you're a top performer. Like I remember in first year, one of my profs was like the difference between like the average coder and a really good coder is like 10 times. So like your salary can increase exponentially and your roles can increase exponentially. So you might even end up becoming like a senior engineer faster if you're like really good in the interviews and you're really good as a software engineer. So I would say just practice. Like especially if you're going into like the coding field, I would say just practice as much as you can. Try to solve problems, and not only in the way that you're solving the problem, but like your code is optimal. And like I think Saka mentioned in one of the previous answers, coding is the easy part, but making it robust, making it scalable, so that people in the future, if someone 5 years from now needs to see your code and be like, what was going on here, they should be able to understand what's going on. So your code should be clean, it should be like optimized, it should be organized, and it should be something that's like, you're thinking of all aspects, not just the coding part. You're thinking of like how other people are going to be using your code, or how you're calling other functions. Everything should like kind of work things together. And the only way you can really achieve that is through a lot of practice. The more you practice, the better coder you become. So I would say like if you have like free time to, like you said, work on side projects, maybe go to hackathons, because you have like limited time to do a lot of code. So it's also good to like put you in that kind of stressful environment. So I would say practice is the most important. So like continue to refine your skills. And when you have that high skill set, it's showed to people that are knowledgeable in the field. And if I'm knowledgeable in the field, I'll know if someone has a little bit of knowledge versus if they have a lot of knowledge. So that really makes a big difference.
Those are definitely great answers about securing a job. I kind of want to stay on this question for a little bit though. Can we also talk about when you do land that role and you're, you know, in the midst, like you're 2 months into your 4-month co-op, how can you make sure that you stand out and your managers remember you even after you leave? We can start with Sam.
So I think the biggest thing is being proactive in picking up tasks. The worst thing you can do in an internship is procrastinate and just let the time stroll by, because there will be times that there's no manager oversight, and so you want to establish that trust with your managers and your coworkers that you're reliable and actually doing the work, and focusing on code quality, not necessarily code quantity, making sure code is robust, it's clean, and I think that's probably the main things that I think so.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome.
Just to kind of supplement his answer, I'll say to supplement his answer, sometimes there might not be work available for you to do. In addition to being proactive, try to do the things other people wouldn't. So maybe there's like, I'm like 95% sure there are like tickets from like 2020 in my team's backlog. You can pick up those tasks, take a look at them, and give yourself work in that. But again, you have to communicate with like your manager or your mentor regarding that. Other than that, one other important thing is like ask questions. It's really worrisome if you're an intern or a new grad and you don't have any questions. When someone asks you, oh, do you have any questions? You're like, nah, I don't have any questions. It's very worrisome. It kind of shows that you're disengaged with the team or you don't understand it and you're not asking questions, right? You're not asking clarification questions. The expectation is for you to ask questions. The honest truth about it is there's no dumb question. Sometimes the question you think might be dumb might actually trigger something for the engineer or the mentor giving you the task to do, to reflect upon and be like, oh, this is something we actually didn't consider. So, ask questions. Very important.
And also recommends maybe like scheduling weekly one-on-ones with your manager, because that really gives you like face time. And if you have like a job where you're an intern and there's like several other interns, you kind of need to like, if they, let's say they want to choose someone for a return offer, you need to stand out from them. And regardless of the work you're doing, like let's say you're all doing great work, then what makes you stand out is again that like personal connection that you have. So again, I think like weekly one-on-ones or bi-weekly, whatever works for your manager, like his time and your time, that would be good, because then you can talk about not only work but like anything else. You can have just like regular communication, like random conversations about anything that kind of actually build that personal connection, rather than just only talking to your manager when you want to talk about work or this task that needs to be done.
Yeah, definitely agree. And then just moving on to the next one. So a little bit forward facing. We want to ask your guys' opinion because obviously tech is like so fast evolving. You know, it feels like every day I open the news and another Chinese company has released a new AI model. But just looking within your own companies that you guys work in, what would you say like the tech that's actually like shaping the future, that's actually being used in like an enterprise environment? Like it doesn't have to be as glamorous maybe as AI, but maybe just something interesting or cool that you've seen your company start to adopt. Yeah.
The honest truth about the answer is AI.
Yeah.
That's just the truth of the matter. It's AI. But to kind of supplement the question in itself, I think one of the things to kind of understand in terms of like an employability perspective is a lot of companies now, at least in my company, they focus on like hiring people that can bring value to them. Gone are the days where like companies just hire a lot of engineers for the sake of hiring a lot of engineers. For instance, like in my company, right, the core culture is still the same, but a lot of the changes have occurred around like evaluating engineers. They now specify like, oh, this is what you should have to do at this level. If you're software engineer 1, this is what you have to do. If you're software engineer 2, this is what you have to do. And they're trying to ensure that like engineers are actually bringing value as opposed to just having a bunch of people just work on the project.
Cool. Soccer, you want to go next?
Yeah, my take on this was AI as well. So ChatGPT happened like around 2022. So I've seen it happen, like it not being used in the workplace and how it does affect the workplace. So ChatGPT our team uses that on a daily basis as a supplement to like Google search. And GitHub Copilot is like a necessity at this point because it's crazy how much more efficient it actually can make you as an engineer. And I think more so in the future, AI will kind of like make these processes more efficient. And I'm not exactly sure how right now, but I can just see it becoming more a bigger part of an engineer's day-to-day life.
Honestly, I would say the same thing about AI, but in terms of like per company, I think it's different. So like, for example, a lot of companies are creating their own like AI that is suitable for the company and their needs. So for example, my relative is working at Meta right now, and he mentioned that they have an AI that's like, so it's like very smart and it's very like, so it's like, you can't really compare it to ChatGPT. It's like very different. It's like very smart and it's very like if you say that it's working on basically how Meta's code base is, so it goes based off of that. So you say you ask it to like make, for example, like an API, like a very simple API or some like SQL statement. It'll go based off of how the company's already doing things, and then based off of that, it'll give you like personalized code based off of where your company's practices are. So it's not just giving you general code, but it's giving you like very specified code. I do think that might be the future. So it's not just like, so each company might have this like specified version of like an AI model or machine learning model that helps assist its like employees. So like not only coding, but like going through documentation, answering questions. Like we also have this recently, actually, I think a few weeks ago, it was introduced this one AI. If I ask it a question, I go like, oh, how do I change this model for like this application? And then it'll tell me, go through the documentation within my company and tell me how to specifically solve this problem for my use case. So it's no longer like a general AI search. It's like a very personalized AI search, which I think is very useful.
Yeah, I just want to make a small comment on that. I forgot actually. So my team in our previous hackathon, we actually worked on an LLM because one of the problems was there's thousands and thousands of documentation, and it's tough to find exactly what you're looking for. So one of the projects that we worked on was feeding all this documentation to an LLM and then just asking it. So that's one example of how AI is kind of like integrating into the workplace, and teams are working on custom tools in order to reduce like engineering time spent on these tasks and make things more efficient.
Awesome, thank you.
So now we're just going to be moving on to like individual questions. So first one's for Abdul Basit. Last year you were promoted from Software Engineering 1 to Software Engineering 2. Congratulations. Can you, mashallah, can you walk us through how you approach growth and added responsibilities at work?
Yeah. So growth-wise, I would say like my main focus was like Yuna said, teams are usually like in charge of like an entire ecosystem. So growth-wise, there's so much, you can't learn all the ecosystem at once, or learn it, you can't learn it all at once. So growth-wise, my focus was just picking each up tasks that help, or projects that help me like touch each component, and just learning it and building my knowledge base on our systems at work, so that I can contribute to like other people's problems, I can understand technical discussions, and I can just provide value essentially. In terms of like transitioning to like from a like in terms of responsibilities or added responsibilities, to get promoted, you actually have to demonstrate 30 to 40% of the next level that you're trying to reach. So it's not like, oh, you're doing your work really well, that's dope. You have to sort of go above and beyond to a certain extent. So that kind of helped with like my transition. So for instance, I was working on, when I was a software engineer 1, when I was a software engineer 1, my main focus was just completing tasks, and maybe 1 or 2 I got the opportunity to actually lead the project. Now it's like everyday occurrence of like, hey, we have this project, you have to be proactive in communicating like, oh, what's the progress on the project? What are other engineers doing on the project? What's the progress of the project? Why is it stalled? Why is it, what's the deadline for it? Just being more involved. So yeah, I'll say like in terms of like added responsibility, you kind of already like have a feel of that prior to actually getting to that.
And very quickly, I just want to touch on a point. You said, so now like your day-to-day is a lot of leading projects. Can you like very briefly just talk about how it was important to maintain and develop your soft skills to be able to do that effectively?
Oh yeah, it is very important. One of the, like I said, one of the things that that companies, or at least my company is doing is like defining the expectation of each level. one of the expectation of me is like the ability to mentor like interns and new grads, right? So with that comes like communicating and reviewing people's PRs, and you can't just say like this is wrong. You have to actually take like a very political approach to reviewing PRs, is how I put it. So like each of those skill sets are very important to like getting to lead a project where like a person, a new grad or an intern might not understand a certain concept. You have to be patient with that person. You can't be like, hey yo, why don't you understand this in the teaching school, right? So like, yeah, I would say like soft skills are very important and they're generally important. In the interest of time, we can touch on the data, but they're very important. Being an engineer is not just about can you code, can you not code. Being an engineer is not about can you code, can you not code. You have to be able to communicate, you have to be able to document, you have to be able to mentor. I'll say like those are the three important things.
Awesome. No, that's a really good response. Thank you. So this next question is pretty interesting and important to me because I'm gonna ask Saket, and I actually met him on the way to a hackathon in a bus. We were going to Hack Western. So I just want to ask you like your experiences with building side projects and attending hackathons, and why do you think like it's important to do these things that seems like kind of extra sometimes. Sometimes you don't really want to do them. But why it's important to focus on these things when you're an aspiring software engineer.
Yes. So just to state the obvious, side projects are very important. I feel like right now, software has become very competitive and it's very saturated. So you need to hop on ways on distinguishing your resume from the thousand other applicants. And side projects are a great way to do that. My first co-op, I got it on the day of my final exam, and it was more of a volunteering job. And the reason I struggled so much was the only things I had on it was like my courses. And I feel like side projects should be focused on, and as you progress through your internships, as you pick up new skills, try working on more challenging things. And beyond that, I think it demonstrates passion and interest to the employer, which is very important. They don't want to hire someone who's just in it for the money or having that name on the resume. They really want to see that you're passionate and genuinely interested in this job. And hackathons, I think beyond the fact that it looks good on a resume and all that, I think it's just fun. So do experience a hackathon, work on something cool. You might disagree, but it is fun.
I definitely disagree.
Yeah.
I digress.
Awesome. So the last question is for Yona. So I understand that you used to work at one of the big banks, and then you switched over to like a fintech company. Can you just talk about like more about like what the transition was like, switching from banking and to fintech? And are there any skills that played an advantage in you landing your current role?
Yeah, sure. So previously I was working at RBC, and then I switched to like fintech company Robinhood. So there's like two big differences I noticed. One thing is that RBC is like an established bank and it's been here for a long time. So a lot of their like software, like we were mentioning as well, is kind of outdated, and it's kind of old and it's not as like new, I guess. And they're kind of using the same systems for a long time. So you're using like really old code or like systems that are like just a bit old, and it's like kind of hard to like bring something new and innovative to the table versus the company that I'm at now. It's like a fintech company, but within fintech, it's not that old. Like it's relatively new and it's still growing. So they're always trying to like add new things. It's very fast paced. So for example, when the elections were happening, there's something called event contracts that you can buy, which is basically you saying whether like you think Donald Trump is gonna win or Kamala's gonna win. And then if you buy it and like you win, you get like basically it's up to $1. Like basically on the percentage of how much you think someone's gonna win, you get that much if you win or lose. It's kind of like gambling in a way, but that's just like how it works. But like one day, like I think one of the senior managers was like, "Oh, we should do event contracts. Elections are happening. It's a good way to make like a lot of money." So I know a lot of teams were working. I wasn't in that specific team, but those teams were like working day and night for like a couple weeks to make that happen. So it is like something can just come up, and then you're spending a lot of time to make that happen. So like at the bank, I saw there was more of like a work-life balance, but in Robinhood, there's like less of that because you're working on like a lot of new things. And you have a lot of ownership because a lot of stuff I'm working on is new and I'm like doing it myself and it hasn't been created before. So I have a lot of ownership, but that also means that I have like a lot of the people to respond to it at night if something happens or something's going wrong. Like you have to be quick to fix it, especially because people are trading, right? It's like especially during like 9 to 4, like during the trading hours, you have to be like very alert. You have to make sure that there's nothing going wrong with your code or the system, and if there is, you have to quickly troubleshoot it and fix it. So it's a bit more like fast paced in that way, but honestly I find it more rewarding because I feel like I can see the impact straight up, and then versus banks, it's like you're a little bit in the background and like you're not very at the forefront. But now I feel like I'm more at the forefront because of the type of company and the work that I'm at, and I'm doing a lot of new things which I really enjoy.
I just have like a quick follow-up question about so between like fintech and banking, it's like more boomer to like banking's more like old-fashioned or slow. Did you feel like a shift when going into fintech?
Yeah, I did feel like a big shift, even in like the attitude of the people. Like in fintech, when I first went to like my first day at work, so in the bank, everybody dresses corporate, everybody dresses like business casual, and then my first day at work in like Robinhood, people were wearing like sweats and a t-shirt, and so it's like very laid back, it's very different. And the way people speak to each other, whether they're speaking to your manager, it's more like open and like a more like normal environment, versus at the bank, it's like you're very speaking like coded corporate language because it is a bit more old-fashioned. So yeah, I did find that big difference that way as well.
And then we're gonna do our final question before we open up the floor. We just want to kind of end it off on more of a productive note. So we'll ask one thing from each of you. So what are 3 immediate action items that us listening can go home today and kind of implement, whether it's like something longer we can start today and implement in our routines, or some change we should make if we're not doing it. So yeah, we'll take one from each of you. Who wants to start?
Okay. I guess yeah, one of the first things I mentioned was like the networking aspect. So if you don't have LinkedIn, then you should create one. If you have one, you should update it, and then it's like updated, you should maybe add a post. You can just talk about any project you made, put a picture, add a description of that post, add people from companies that you want to work at, add people that you think is interesting, and maybe just post more. That's something I would say you could do today.
Okay. I would say there's a book called Cracking the Code in Interview. Look it up. You don't have to complete it, but just read like a portion of it. It's a really good book. It's a book I read prior to like doing my new grad stuff, and there's some things that you know. There's some things that you feel you know until like someone tells you, and then you explicitly like keep it in mind during like the interview process. That book is like a wonderful like reference material for like a summary of what we've said today.
Yep. And from me, I'd say the action item is, if you feel like you're not getting interviews, look at your resume. Keep it one page. Keep the structure very simple. Make sure you're using keywords. If you're applying full stack, React, Java, Spring, make sure they are in your resume and bolded. And yep, resume, one page.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This is the most important one, and to be honest, it's just don't wait for a course to teach you. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't learn Node, I didn't learn React, I didn't learn all of that at Laureate, my first learning teacher, professor. Just be proactive in learning, like actually be proactive. You're not gonna learn all of those things in class. How I view courses is it teaches you or introduces you to the foundation of things that you need to know, but it doesn't teach you the actual skill sets you're going to need in the course.
So now we're gonna open the floor to some questions. Say.
Yes, so I just had a quick question regarding AI. So you guys mentioned that it is the future. So I know, Sabi, you mentioned that you fine-tuned a few models at your place. I was just wondering what types of like AI and like integrations you guys are working on at your companies or like other teams are, and how can we like position ourselves best to basically meet the demands of your companies you're working at respectively.
I can start. So basically, for the AI companies, especially the ones that are like working within the company to create the whatever like app for the specific company, a lot of the models are like already created. Like you're not like reinventing like a new model. You're not coming up with a new AI model, right? I think the best way to get into, especially if you have no experience, is to get in, become AI adjacent. You know, you can work in an AI team, not as like an AI developer, but like somebody that's just within the AI team as maybe like a software developer, not specifically in AI. So now you'll be working on the AI component, but not specifically within AI, because if you don't have any experience, they might not have you like working directly on it. So I would say you could start off with being AI adjacent, and then that way you can put it on your resume that you worked in an AI team, and that actually gives you that kind of exposure, and you'll have more knowledge. So it might not be as easy to jump straight in, but you can like find your way to it through like the knowledge you have now.
Yeah. be honest, I actually don't have an answer or response to that. Because I specifically don't work on AI stuff. I still do like web development stuff. I think you now kind of touched on the main point, which is like you're not going to have like the main skills that you need. One of the things that I sort of find challenging with like AI is that it's ever changing, right? There's a new model, there's a new something. There's always a new something, to be honest. I personally prefer for something to be established and the process to be sort of standardized within the industry before I like dive into things. But if you are interested in that, just understand or have the mindset that you're going to be a researcher as opposed to like learning something standardized. So.
Yep, and I think I mentioned we're using pre-existing models, and one comment I like to make is surprisingly easy how you can integrate these things and make up your own custom like ChatGPT stuff.
Any questions from anyone?
So, a lot of us here, I think I speak on for at least a bit of us, say we don't have any projects and we don't know really what to do. So, do you guys have any projects in mind that, we could kind of start researching on our own and implement on our own, seeing as we practically know close to nothing, real world applications and like any courses or like stuff that can help us make us stand up?
Yeah, so software engineering is a very broad field. There's a lot of different technologies, softwares. So you can kind of like dip your toe in, for example, web development. Try React, TypeScript, and the best way would be to. This is how I started off actually, watching YouTube videos. Build your own portfolio website. That was one of my first project. And then over time, as you feel that you develop a passion for front-end development, back-end development, or whatever it is, you spend more time working on more like challenging projects. For me, what that looked like was I was using sticky notes to keep track of my grades, for example, and I built like a full-stack application, which was like the co-op I was also hoping to get. So that's something. Use YouTube and then kind of just like dip your toe with different tools and softwares and see what it says.
I would say like my own personal approach to finding projects to work on, because honestly, it's really hard to like think of something unique. It's just reflecting in your life and seeing like what are the challenges that you face. An instance of this, for instance, is there's a Sonar system at Laurier where like essentially students can sign up for research studies, and they either pay you like cash or they give you like bonus percentages for your coursework, right? And the issue that I had with the system was it doesn't have a notification feature, so students didn't know when a new notification came on. I built like a 50-line script to just notify me connected to like a database, and I utilized that, and a lot of my friends and classmates utilized that. And funny enough, I have like a lot of like I would say like really big projects, right? Of all of them, in my interviews, people only want to talk about that one because it was something that actually like impacted people's life, as opposed to like a tool that is just on your LinkedIn that people can see but they can't interact with. Does that make sense? Or it doesn't provide any value to other people. So just reflect on your personal life. It could be something like simple as like, I work out daily and I keep track of like my workout regimen through Excel sheets. Why don't I just build an app where I can just kind of see like a graph of the progress that I'm making in terms of like my weights or the time I spend, or like how much reps I have within each set.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I think the main thing is like if you don't have an idea, then like the first thing you can do is maybe try to solve a problem in your life. Like when I was starting out, I think my cousin has a security business. So the problem that he was having was like figuring out how much to like bill his clients based off of the data he had. And like a lot of softwares online weren't giving him like a personalized solution. So then I just was like, okay, maybe I can figure something out, like maybe code up something, an algorithm. So then I was able to do that. So it's like kind of solving a problem, working towards something. And if you have a problem that you want to solve, especially when it's important to you, it might help you more to like get into like the greedy details because you would want to work harder. It might help you with the motivation and like the basically overall idea that you want.
Thank you guys. Who's next? Rayon.
Alright, so when you started a new position at a co-op, right, was there any strategy you had in place to quickly learn the code base? Because at a lot of these companies, there's thousands of lines of code, dozens of microservices.
Okay. To be honest, there's one of two ways to approach this. When you start a new position at a company, at least from my own experience, there's usually someone that you're supposed to like report to, and or like not even report to, sometimes it's just a mentor, like someone that you can have a conversation with, right? They are the ones that provide guidance, because some code base can be really, really, really large. Like there's something called like a mono repository, which is like everyone's code is within one single repository. You trying to learn that, I'll be honest with you, take 1 year, you're not gonna learn everything, right? So just having a conversation with like a mentor and just saying, okay, could you provide me like a roadmap that you used to learn when you first joined? And that is a good way to probably start that learning, essentially.
Yeah, I agree with that. In terms of learning as well, I think you learn more as you do. So like you can read through the code, but you won't fully understand it unless you're trying to change a part of the code, and then you have to go through like different other functions and see how they're interacting with each other. I think the best thing is like to just go over the documentation so you know like for your team specifically what you're gonna be working on, which like pieces of code, and then just like working with it, like filling with it, trying to figure out how different like APIs interact with each other.
Yep. I don't think because the code bases are so big that I don't think you'll ever understand it. But I find once you're starting off, you always tend to pick up smaller tasks, and that kind of like grows. And slowly you understand like different components, how they interconnect. And it's something you just gotta give it time. And once again, like a lot of learning and a lot of like curiosity helps you.
Would you guys say like learning the business logic behind the code or the components would also help you understand?
That helps a lot, yeah, because especially if you want to make changes to the code, you need to understand why they did something a certain way so that your new code can reflect like the business behind it. Because at the end of the day, like a lot of the code you're doing, first of all, it goes through like a whole process where the business team has to approve it, and then at the end you code it. So it's really important to understand why this code is really working.
100%. Great insight. Nice. Awesome. Any more questions? Don't be shy. Oh yes, at the back.
I'm just curious as to whether each of you guys landed your first role out of school through a return offer from a co-op, or if you didn't. And how important is it? Like, is it a necessity in the field, or is it not required?
Yeah, so for me, it was my last internship was a startup, and they ran into some funding issues, so I did not get a return offer. And so I basically just, I did not get any referrals, I was just like applying, and then luckily enough I got something, so it's, yeah, that's my story.
So it's the funny enough, same story. For me, I actually was proactive not to work. I proactively didn't want to work for any of my internships, not because they were like bad or anything of that sort. I just had like the mind. I just had I don't know. There was a thought that came to mind. I was just like, I'm not going back to like places I've already worked for. I want to like start from scratch and have someone evaluate me based on my current skill set. Not a mentality I advise anyone to do. It's just something I'm just stating. In terms of like applying, I honestly had like a big Excel sheet where I just keep track of like the companies I applied to, what resume I used. Very important, because sometimes you change your resume and just not realize like what they call it. Like this is the version of the resume I used to apply. So when you're talking, sometimes they usually have their resumes in front of them. So when they don't see things match up, they're like this borderline. Yeah. So to answer your question, no, I did not have a return offer. And secondly, I proactively applied. Sorry, just one more thing to add to that. When you're applying for a company, or the strategy I used was, if I see a job on LinkedIn, I actually just went to the company's website to check if the job was available there, and just applied on the company's website, as opposed to like applying through LinkedIn.
For me, I did receive like a return offer, but at the time, while it was very controversial in the news, and I was scared that if I worked there as like a full-time, it might hinder my possibility to work at other companies. Like especially if I wanted to like move to the States in the future, just cause like that company and a lot of the chips are like banned in like the States, and even in Canada they were having a lot of like issues. So that's why I didn't want to return there as a full-time. So then I didn't accept that return offer, and then yeah, I was just applying, but like I mentioned earlier, I think LinkedIn is very important. So I ended up having like a recruiter reach out to me on LinkedIn, and that's how I got my like first role out of grad.
I think we can do one more question. If anyone has any.
At the back.
As you guys described, software engineering is a really broad like area to work in. I'm just wondering if you guys like change fields at all. For example, going from a more data intensive position to something a bit more coding oriented, maybe project management. If so, how did you guys make that decision?
For me, I started off with backend and I'm still in backend. In the middle, I had like a small gap of like, for a few months I was working on more like the production side of things, so it wasn't really coding, but it was more like figuring out like what's going on in the system itself, like very low level. And I do think that helped me a lot, especially in landing my current role, because you really understand, like software is, like you mentioned, it's not just about coding, but it's about the entire system together and how it's working together. So I think taking a few months and only working on like the system aspect of it, and like for example Kafka, like messages, how they're coming from one like area to another, how jobs are being run, that really helps you optimize your code. So it helps me come back and be a better software engineer in terms of like writing code. So that's why I think I had that like gap in the middle, where I went from back end to like specifically very low level and then back to back end.
Funny enough, when I was a software engineer one, I was working on front end, and like 7 months ago, that's when I switched to back end. The honest truth about the matter is like it depends on like two scenarios. So are you switching like fields within like the company, or are you switching fields outside, like going to a new job, right? The latter will require you to like actually build the skill set or like the resume or the prerequisite to be able to land the new job. The former would require you having a conversation with your manager and like outlining an expectation of like, hey, this is what I want to do. And that's what I did. I explained to my manager like, hey, I love front end, but like if I left your company, not a lot of people hire from the engineers. People usually focus more on back-end engineers, right? So just having that conversation and just also having a level of expectation that like, hey, it's actually going to be like an uphill battle, right? There's going to be like an expectation of like, oh, an individual has been at this work for 1 year, this is a skill set they should have. You're going to be competing against someone with that head start, right? So your learning curve would have to be like, you have to like sort of put additional time in to kind of like develop those skill set. So it's just a personal decision of like, are you willing to make that sacrifice? Why are you switching in the first place? Is that reason strong enough? And what are some of the effects on maybe like finances, and in terms of like your compensation, and in terms of promotion, and how those are some of the things you might have to consider if you're trying to switch.
Yeah, as for me, I kind of found my thing in my first co-op, which was front-end development, then focus on back-end, and kind of the rest co-ops were like full stack, mix of back-end, front-end. So I really didn't like switch the major field. It was mostly like web development full stack.
Awesome. Yeah, so this concludes our CS panel for today. We want to thank everyone for coming, and especially thank you guys for taking your time to come here, sharing your experiences. Hopefully this helped a lot. And we just want to give a quick shout out to some MSA members for helping out throughout the event, especially Umar. You know, he reached out to these guys, hosted this event, organized it. So just a quick round of applause for everyone. I think now we're going to be having some food, and speakers are going to be here, so you can definitely have an opportunity to come up to them, ask some questions, get to know them as well. Just a quick announcement, we're going to be having a resume workshop. Just keep an eye on the Instagram page where you can have opportunity to have one-on-one meetings with fourth-year students. But in terms of food, we're just going to start with the first 2 rows to get food, and then we'll continue from there. But again, thank you guys.